Deputy Mayor, councillors, CEO, directors, ladies and gentlemen. The traditional custodians of this wonderful place we call home in our valley, the Iwi people, have represented a human occupation in our region for about 60,000 years. And whenever we gather together as a council and a community, we pay our respects to the traditional custodians and recognise their continuing connection to our land and our community through their elders, past, present, and those emerging. So this council meeting is being streamed live. Welcome to our online viewers. It's being recorded and published in accordance with the council's standing orders. Welcome to our audience and our public participation members in the gallery today. I draw your attention to the live streaming of council meetings message on the top right hand corner there. And I'm required to tell you that by attending a public meeting of council today, you are consenting to your image and your voice if you speak to be recorded and published. And we're also required to tell you that you may be subject to legal action if your actions and comments are deemed inappropriate or unacceptable, which I'm sure they won't be. So thank you very much for being here. We pay the meeting open. And thank you, councillors, for your attendance today. Leading our prayer today, it's Reverend John McKim. Reverend John.
Let us pray. Our Lord and Saviour, we recognise that we are still moving through challenging times. Whether it be COVID-19, the vaccination of our population, border closures, opening of borders nationally, internationally, economic hardship, unemployment, climate change. These challenges, however, remind us that we are blessed as a community. So today, as we come before you to give you thanks for our region, we pray for all who live, work and call this place home, and that we are still able to move around freely and enjoy the beauty of our region. Today we pray for our Mayor Greg Williamson and his leadership, and for each councillor that you would give them the spirit of wisdom, compassion, discernment, responsibility and justice. We pray this council, together with all its officers and staff, may faithfully serve our community in all their various portfolios and promote the well-being of all people to whom they are responsible. We pray for the various deliberations and decisions that they are to make today, that those decisions will empower growth and equity among all, create a healthier and safer place to live and a more enjoyable environment, and will enable all our businesses and community groups to flourish. We continue to pray also for those who've suffered loss. We pray for our health professionals and other volunteers who are trying to bring healing and hope to so many. So Lord, we have so much to be thankful in our region, and we give you thanks as we meet together in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Reverend John. Nobody else on council business? No apologies. Are there condolences? No condolences. Does anybody have a conflict of interest to declare today at this meeting? None? Let's move on to the confirmation of the minutes of the 13th of October 2021 meeting. They've been circulated. Somebody like to move that they be adopted. Councillor Mann moves, seconded by Councillor Hassan. Those in favour? Any against? Motion is carried. The business arising out of those minutes have been included in this agenda item, and there were some actual changes to the agenda, and we have to note in item 8 that the business arising has been updated to include the response for Councillor Bella's inquiry about the outcome of the tilapia takedown initiative. So that's included and will be included in these minutes. There's also two other agenda item changes, 11.1.1 about the Christmas closure. I think you've all got that, the updated report item on that. And 17.2, the approved sponsorship, it should be read September 2021, not August. So those were the changes that came out. All right, so let's move on. There's no mayoral minutes today. Consideration of committee reports and recommendations now. The Audit Committee, the minutes of the meeting of the 27th of September, pretty well straightforward. Any questions? Somebody like to move the Audit Committee be adopted? The report, Councillor Bella moves, seconded by Councillor Hassan. Councillor Bella.
I do have something to say regarding this. I'd like at this point to highlight the valuable work that the Audit Committee does and the people that do report to the Audit Committee. Financial statements, while it was only a 15-minute meeting, the presentation of those statements is a very important thing for our council. And I'd actually like to reinforce both your comments and the committee's comments regarding congratulations to the financial services team. I think they do a great job in an area that I've always found difficult, to say the least. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bella, well said, and yes, it might be straightforward, but it represents a huge amount of work. Any other speakers? I'll put the motion, those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried, thank you. 1.1. What do we do? Maybe I'll do 10.1 first. Where is 10.2?
Visual Arts Advisory Committee.
I don't have a tab on it, so I missed it. Draft minutes of the Visual Arts Advisory Committee meeting. Any questions on this?
I do have a question, Your Worship.
Yes, Councillor Jones.
I just wanted to know, I note on page 16 on the general business of the minutes, there's talk of a major upgrade coming, in times to come for the art space. And I was just wondering if we, at some stage, can get a briefing to council about that, as it'll be probably a major project, and we know how far away that this is going to be. Probably a really silly question would be that the feds certainly help fund this wonderful facility that we have, and wondering if there's any
So your
money.
question is you want
Want a
if we
briefing?
can get a briefing on it, I
Please,
think we could
thank
do
you.
that. Arrange it at some stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Worship.
No other questions? Somebody like to move? Councillor Townsend moves, seconded by Councillor Green. Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Your Worship. The VAC meeting conducted a very productive meeting, and with the acquisition of several new and outstanding pieces of art to include in our collection. And these include work by our local artist, Dylan Mooney, who has strong ties to Mackay and is the first UE artist to be successful on the national stage. So we all agreed that it's extremely important to support Dylan's career, as he is a very positive example of someone achieving in this region. We also acquired another piece of work by Jasmine Togo Brisby, who also has family ties to Mackay region and considers here as her home. Her work Mother Tongue features Jasmine's mum and was shot on the submerged burial ground of the historic ship Don Juan. Artspace was delighted to have donations of artwork from 4 artists who have connections to our gallery, they being Cherie Kinley-Side, Bruno Letty, Ron McBurney and Helen Cole. So we've all had their artwork displayed in our gallery. We also had a book donation of Over Here Artists, which was created as a COVID-19 project undertaken by 20 of our local artists. It captures a moment in time for our region that may never happen again, hopefully, and therefore we believe it is a very positive addition to our collection. Approval was also given to public art applications, including the Walkerston Water Tower. They want to have an Anzac mural on there. Serena Beach, a toilet block mural which represents the community well and was undertaken by local artist Kate Brunner. The mural was unveiled at Serena Beach Coconut Festival and was well received by the local community. 9th Lane Mackay Laneway project has had some setbacks due to the artist being unable to travel due to COVID. However, it is hoped that it will be completed by Easter 2022. And I'm sure this is going to receive the positive feedback from our community from the 5th Lane project. And I'm really looking forward to this completion as well. The Marion Canecutter Memorial Statue, it's fallen into disrepair and as such has become a workplace health and safety issue. So a local out there, Joan Vickers, she successfully fundraised for its replacement and raised $80,000 through grant funding and sponsorship. So a great effort by one lady. So experienced bronze artist Kay Patton from Nebo has been assigned to create a new statue, and which she is a great fit for this project because she has come from regional Queensland and knows its value to the community. So overall, a great meeting. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Townsend. Speaker against? Any other speakers? I'll put the motion, those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried. Thank you. Right, now we'll do 11.1.1. Very good. This is the Christmas closure and schedule of the council meetings, and there was an updated agenda item come out for that. This is fairly straightforward. Are there questions at all? No questions? Would somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor Mann moves the reports. Councillor Jones seconds. Councillor Mann. Straightforward. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried. Thank you. 11.1.2, the final management report for Mackay Regional Council for 2021 for the financial year. This, of course, is the Queensland Audit Office reporting to me, and then that comes to the council for your adoption. It is a fairly good report, fairly well straightforward. I do make a comment about the whip, so we'll ask the CEO to speak to the report. Maybe the whip.
Yes, Mayor. Again, very good. We've only had one finding, so again, that goes to the strength of the governance and the transparency of what we've been reporting on. In terms of the whip, it has been an ongoing issue for us for a while. We've got a few measures though that are going to address that going forward. So we've increased some resourcing, temporary resourcing in the finance part of it to sort of move the projects onto the finance registers. We've also got people looking at the as constructed drawings, which is when they go into the system, which allows the assets then to be put into the system, which then allows the finances to remove off of the whip. And we're looking at mechanisms which we can improve that and put pressure both on the contractors and making sure our internal workforce do that. So while we have been doing that, it's pleasing that so far the very old whip has come down by a couple of million already as we're focusing, and we expect to over the course of this year reduce our whip substantially.
Thanks, CEO. Any questions? Councillor Bella.
Page 27 of the hard copy reports reported operating surplus of 5.9 million in addition to net capital movements of 44.6.
Councillor Bella, I think you're in the next agenda item. Is it the end of your year result? We're actually talking about the management report from the Queensland Audit Office.
Oh, my apologies.
Okay. Are there questions on that one? No further questions? Would somebody like to move the adoption? Councillor May moves, seconded by Councillor Green. Councillor May?
No, I think you've said it all.
Any other? Okay, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried. Thank you. 11.1.3 now, the end of the year financial result. This is no change to the results forecasts that we've had before and the discussion we've had before. This is the final adoption by council of our official end of year report. CEO.
Yeah. So just reinforcing what you're saying, Mayor, is that this is just finalising that there's been no changes from when it was reported here earlier to the final closeout of all the movements in the books. So consistent with what was reported here earlier, we're running with that 5.9 million operating surplus for the year. There is an improvement in the cash balances and also there's an improvement in community equity ownership of about 175 million, which reflects revaluation accounts and things like that. So consistent with what's been reported earlier.
Okay. Questions now, Councillor Bella.
As I was stated prematurely, operating surplus of 5.9, in addition to net capital movements 44.6, favourable net result of 50.5. Those net capital movements, can I have an explanation of those?
Yes, CEO.
So as just mentioned a minute ago, some of those or the large ones are going to the revaluation of the asset accounts. So each time you sort of look at assets, there's a revaluation account which goes up or down, and you would expect to see reasonably significant swings, but on top of that we had the revals of the roads and drains, so that was impacted. So that's a large part of those capital swings.
Right. So it's a net increase of $7 million for the year. Further questions? No further questions? Okay, so this is the adoption of the end of year results. for 2020-2021. Somebody like to move? Councillor May moves, Councillor Hassan seconds, Councillor May.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. It is a good result for the council, but I draw your attention to the surplus was created mostly out of a change in our depreciation. And as we know, depreciation impacts on our profit and loss, and we've had a favourable depreciation in this particular current financial year, along with some savings in materials and services. So overall, a really good result for council.
Thank you very much. Speaker against? Any other speakers? Other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. The Strategic Financial Report for September 2021. CEO.
Thank you. I might hand this one over to Director.
Certainly, Director. Are you able to deliver?
That's okay. This is the monthly report. Getting my ducks in a row.
Sorry,
So,
can I take that? I was ahead, one on the agenda.
I'm ready for the next one.
I've already teed it up with him. He's going to talk to it. So,
My apologies.
It's yours.
Jeez. Yes.
Hard to get good help.
Well, we're going to, I was just keeping directors on their toes. So yeah, we're forecasting a 1.8 million surplus for the current financial year. There's about $1 million of revenue that's over budget, and the main issue on the cost side is underspend in terms of employee benefits, etc. A large portion of that's due to the parks positions, which we're working through our organisational structure, and then we're going to fill a number of those positions. Having said that, we've done a reforecast, which is the paper that the Director is going to talk to next, right. So probably not a lot of time worth on this one, but on the reforecast.
Right, so thanks, CEO. The questions on the Strategic Financial Report? No questions? You can relax, Director. Okay. Somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor May moves, seconded by Councillor Mann. Councillor May.
I don't think I need to.
Other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. Thank you. Now, the 11.1.5, the September budget review. Director, your name's against this one.
So the September budget review report is presented for your consideration. The report brings to account known variances to the current revised budget. In summary, the current budgeted operating surplus is reduced from 669,000 to 79,000. This is the result of recognition of additional revenue of 2.2 million, offset by an increase in operational expenses of 2.8 million. The main contributing factors to the increase in revenue is additional stadium revenue, as well as additional grants and recoverable works income. It should be noted that these increases in revenue also have a corresponding increase in expenses. There's also an increase in operational expenses associated with capital project adjustments. The predicted end of year result will continue to be monitored and adjusted throughout the year as required. Overall capital project expenditure has decreased by $400,000. This is made up of additional projects of $7 million, offset by savings and deferrals of $7.4 million. There has also been a decrease in capital grant revenue due to project timing and an unsuccessful grant application.
All right, it's a fairly comprehensive report and a pretty good review at this time of the year of the budget. As you know, councillors, we actually looked towards a small surplus at the end of the year. This maintains that. Even though the adoption of the report a couple of reports ago said that we're 1.8 million ahead at this stage. But this actually brings it into view now of the whole budget review itself, with the review of the capital expenditure and the revenue and expenses line items. So are there questions? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Worship. I have three questions. The first one is on page 59, and it's under the heading of contractors. So I note that we're actually using some external labour hire due to all of our vacant positions that we have on council, and the cost so far for those contractors has been $645,000. I'd like to know what percentage of the wages that we budget for the vacant positions is being used to cover the temporary positions that we're filling through the labour hire process, or is that something we don't do?
Director, are we able to answer that now or take it on notice?
I'll take it on notice. The second question, Your Worship, Page 62, a note on the spreadsheet that I think it's, the spreadsheet is for the capital projects in detail. So the first item on the spreadsheet states that the Mackay entrance replacement is 186,000, and then the sixth item states that the JCC Mackay area pavement replacement of 48. Is this the same project, and if so, why are there two separate budget allocations?
Director.
Just the way we deliver them, there'll be two separate assets in the asset register, so we deliver them as two separate projects, but they will probably be delivered at the same time.
Oh, okay.
Just an accounting thing.
And on the same page, I also noted that there are 6 rural bridges that are listed stating that they need emergent works, and I thought that previously we've done an audit on all of our rural bridges, and as such, assumed that we will be programming those works. So I'm just curious now why all of a sudden we have 6 bridges that need emergent works all at once.
We'll get
I'm
the,
happy to take that one, Your Worship. So, thanks, Councillor. We're continuing to do reviews of condition assessments that haven't been across all our rural network, so that will chop and change. So as we're doing the reviews, and if there's higher risk, we'll bring those in as a priority. So it's probably going to be a little bit fluid for the next couple of years until we've done a full condition assessment across the full rural network. But yeah, if we find ones that come to the fore now, we'll bring them in as priority.
Thank you, Worship.
further questions, Councillor Bonwich.
Just in relation to the Director's comment about the extra expenses at the stadium, has a total been compiled in relation to those extra expenses at this stage?
Yes, there has. I haven't seen it, but I believe a full reconciliation of the NRO gains has been done, and I believe it was a small cost to council between 100 and 200,000.
And that'll come to us at some stage. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you. Further questions? No further questions? Somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor May moves, seconded by Councillor Jones. Councillor May.
Just quickly, I think, you know, when we do our budget reviews and when we have such a large overall budget, including the capital program of over $300 million, there's going to be changes throughout the year. So I think what we take on board here is we've still got a positive result forecast going forward, and really want to thank the staff for, there's a lot of work goes into the budget review process, and to bring that to account today to keep us and the community updated. Well done.
Thank you very much, Councillor May. Speaker against? Are there any other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. Thank you. Our Development Services Monthly Review report for September. Director.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you for considering the Development Services Monthly Review report for September. Some highlights for the month are as follows. We're starting to see some multiple dwelling development occurring across the region, which is good to see some alternative housing options being provided for Mackay residents. As shown in the report, in September we approved a material change of use for 9 units at Wentford Street in Mackay. The tilapia takedown event hosted by Reef Catchments was held in September with 14 tilapia caught. Our natural environment team supported this event, and it was a fun day out for families and enjoyed by all. Significant weed control work is continuing at the Botanic Gardens with a long arm excavator clearing the section of the lagoon from the causeway through to the train bridge of weed, and spraying also being undertaken in isolated sections. A weed harvester is booked in for October to continue this work. Now the next couple of items I do mention in my executive summary, but I want to highlight them today as well, and that was to mention the 3 NRL Premiership games which were held in August, September, and then the 2 semi-final games held on the weekend of 17-18 September. Everyone knows securing these games was an amazing achievement and an excellent promotion for Mackay, and we couldn't achieve this without the hard work of staff across council, in particular within the Economic Development and Tourism and MET teams, and also the support from the Invest Mackay Events and Conference Attraction Program. And finally, I just want to mention the Serenshuk Shed celebrated its 15th birthday in September. This was celebrated with a community open day and also a stakeholder thank you function that acknowledged past staff and volunteers. So with that, I'd like to present this report and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Director. Questions for the Director? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Worship. Two questions. Page 80, I note that the Mackay Region Transport Strategy is now moving into its implementations phase. I'm just curious whether or not the Transport Advisory Committee is now going to be involved in any process from here on in. Like, I'm just not sure where that committee fits.
Okay, Director.
Yes, thank you, Worship. At this stage, we have an internal working group with representatives from different programs who are allocated actions through the strategy, and they're actually working on progressing those actions. It may be, I'm not involved in the Transport Committee, but it may be that from time to time there are items that cross over, but at this stage there's just an internal working group handling that implementation.
Further questions?
The second one, on your Worship, was page 95. It just states in the event section there that the Northern Australian Championships is on this weekend. I'm just curious, what sport was that for?
It's life-saving.
Sorry?
North of is life-saving.
Life-saving. Thank you very much, Worship.
Councillor Mann.
I just know that the director's comment about the weed harvester at the Lagoons. I'm just wondering if we're going to utilise that at the goose ponds as required as well.
Sure, Director.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I can't answer that. I'm not sure if it would be suitable based on the type of weeds and also the aquatic environment there. So I know that we are looking at the aquatic weeds at the goose ponds, and that is mentioned in the report. So we will employ whatever options are required to control weeds there as appropriate.
Councillor Seymour.
I see the Riverlet drawings that are completed for the Riverlet there. Do we get a briefing on that before it goes to tender?
As we said, it hadn't changed, but we're sending out the drawings,
No.
so you'll see them. Councillor Ballard.
The previous question I touched on my concerns regarding the weed clearance. I'm just interested to find out what species we do have at the lagoons, and I suppose we're doing it at the goose ponds. And to be honest, with the clearing that we're doing, both the mechanical and the spraying, I understand eradication would be almost impossible there, would be impossible. But what sort of time frame are we looking at of being relatively weed-free before we've got to actually undertake that process once again? I just would like to get a grasp of that sort of thing so we can look at whether there are alternative strategies, whether we could start clearance earlier before.
Two questions, Councillor Bell. So, what type of weeds and
what type of weed? What type of what sort of what would you say freeboard we're going to get from our activities? And my question is getting to the point of should we undertake those activities earlier before the load gets higher, or should we leave it until it gets to a certain level to see what our financial the financial impost is going to be on control?
Okay, Director.
Can I just clarify, are you talking about the lagoons specifically?
Lagoons, but while we're at it, if we can look at the goose ponds, same sort of thing. Like it's at a cost to council. I just want to be sure that we're sort of we're getting to it.
We've got to maintain the question to this particular report. Understand where you're going, and perhaps that's a briefing to council.
It might well be, yes.
But for this particular report, the lagoons, the type of weeds.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'll have to get back to you on the weeds because I'm not a weed expert and I'll probably say the wrong thing.
That's
in terms of the weed control activities, they're ongoing and constant.
Yeah,
in the background, we are working on the desilting trial, and there will be a briefing to council on that hopefully in the next couple of months. And that will be a longer term strategy of creating an environment within the lagoons that makes the weeds not grow back so readily. But as you've said, there's going to be a need to do ongoing weed control and maintenance. And at the moment that is ongoing. We only stop if there's weather considerations that prevent us from being able to carry out that work. It's an ongoing thing.
Okay. Councillor Bonventura.
Just two questions, Your Worship. Page 76, I noticed in the financial report that we're in the red category for our economic development and tourism to the tune of about 440,000 for our year-to-date spend. I just asked the Director, does she can believe any upcoming events will suffer because of this for the balance of our financial year?
Director?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. That was pre-reconciliation from all the NRL. There was a lot of movements associated with the NRL games and some other factors as well, I think mentioned in the report. So that's been addressed through the September budget review. So we don't believe that will have an impact on our events program and our support for events.
Pleased to hear that. Second question, Your Worship. On page 77, in the development assessment area, I note that we have a lot of applications in every section showing a large number of under-assessment. Can I ask the Director if this is higher than normal, and what is the risk for us as a council if this continues?
Director?
Thank you, Worship. That just reflects the large number of applications that we have at the moment. We do have a large application load on each of our planners and engineers because we have a lot of development activity occurring. We are looking at adding some additional resources at the moment to respond to that continuing high level of workload, but that just reflects the conditions that we're in at the moment in terms of application numbers.
Yeah, I was more interested in what risk it gives council as far as reputational risk.
And us not meeting the deadlines, I think we're meeting most deadlines.
Yeah, we are. We're not. I guess it's fair to say we're not breaking any records at the moment, but we're meeting our statutory obligations. But the intention is to bring on more resources that will help us deliver a higher level of service because we haven't been able to because of the sheer number of applications.
Right, thank you.
Councillor Green.
Thank you. Just page 83 and page 95, I've just picked up that the city centre Wi-Fi sessions and the Serena Field of Dreams Wi-Fi usage, both the users and the sessions are significantly lower for both sites compared to previous months. Is that just an anomaly, or have we had some issues with Wi-Fi in those areas?
Director?
I'll have to take that one on notice.
All right. Further questions? No further questions? The Development Services Report, would somebody like to move its adoption? Councillor Englert, seconded by Councillor Jones. Councillor Englert.
Thank you, Worship. Most of my notes have been mentioned already, so I'll keep it brief to my congratulations of the Economic Development team and the MEC team. Over the last month, we've had Raiders versus Sydney Roosters, the Pertec Motor Show, the semi-final round 1 and 2, softball Queensland Under-16 Boys State Championships, Queensland State Show jumping and the jumping, Rumble on the Reef wakeboarding, and the Girls 7 Junior State Championships. This is an enormous amount of work that's been completed over the last month, but in particular to their NRL games, one of the directors mentioned there may be a small loss on the events, but I make the point that for the two semi-finals we had 973 and 1,218 out of area visitors. We had 5,000 locals and 4,000 locals getting an opportunity to see those. But more importantly, the semi-final on the 17th and 18th of September had a combined broadcast viewership of 2.8 million, which is an NRL record. So I'm happy to take that into account as free advertising in the best way we could possibly imagine. So congratulations to both teams, and I'm going to limit it to that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Englert. Speaker against? Yeah, the speakers. Speaking for, Councillor Green.
Thank you. Yeah, look, I'd like to share the sentiments of Councillor Englert. That has been a huge program, and it continues into a huge program into the next month. So right now we've got the Queensland Champion of Champion finals in bowls, and the Local Government Association of Queensland conference is on right now. That's 700 delegates from across 73 out of the 77 local government area is in Queensland are right here in Mackay spending their dollars right now. So that's a huge bonus to us. The North Queensland Championships, which is lifeguarding, is on this weekend, and the Women's Big Bash League will be on in November. So some really exciting and quite significant events coming up thanks to our Invest Mackay Events and Attraction program. But another thing that came out of that, a conference that we've recently held, is the National Economic Development Conference. And congratulations to the Economic Development team for collaborating with Economic Development Australia for putting on this event. It was to be an in-person event, which would have been very exciting, but the decision was made to take this fully virtual. But our team here still managed to put on a really great event locally where we invited neighbouring councils, and it was great to see Whitsunday and Bundaberg even send some delegates, so there was some opportunities for some networking. But the value of the conference itself was exceptional. Great speakers, great content all around circular economy. And I think one of the key quotes I heard from that is that turkeys don't vote for Christmas. And that was all about, if you earn your wages from a linear economy, then it's very difficult to bring you along on the circular economy ride. And that's what community engagement is going to be significantly, a significant part of bringing along our communities on the circular economy ride. So it was a fantastic event, which I found personally highly valuable. And another thing I'm very keen to learn about is the innovative 100-year maintenance-free bridge that Geelong City Council has developed. So, great conference. So once again, Invest Mackay Events and Conference Attraction Program is really kicking some big goals, and I think it's a significant program within our organisation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Green. Are there other speakers? Councillor Jones speaking for.
Yes, Your Worship. Just on page 94, I just wanted to make note of the e-statistics table that we have in our report. It's really encouraging to see the highest increase in those stats on our social media. Being an avid fisherman, hooked on Mackay and the fishing sites that we look after. We really do actually live in the greatest part of Australia, and I really do look forward to Mackay becoming the fishing destination of Queensland. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jones. Are there other speakers? No other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. Let's move on now to 11.2.2, the DA number 93 for 2021, reconfiguration of a lot, boundary realignment. So this is a fairly comprehensive report. And 11.2.2, we have some speakers to this report before we consider it, councillors. At least one. So, Mr. Rex Muncho, so the rules of engagement, Rex, are that you have 3 minutes. This is not an interactive session. You can present to the council and councillors will consider what you say. But 3 minutes, it's all yours.
Well, thank you. I don't think I'll need 3 minutes, but good morning, Your Worship, Mayor Greg Williamson, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rex Muncho and I'm currently landowner at 24 Sorenson's Road, Cove. And am the applicant requesting council to reconsider our request for a boundary realignment. My father, Tony Perner, father-in-law, pardon me, Tony Perner, who owns the adjoining parcel of agricultural land, could not attend today, but is in agreement with the boundary realignment request. Our proposal is to increase the house lot in order to adequately separate and rectify encroachment issues by providing a 40-metre buffer from agricultural activities to the existing dwelling, which is in keeping with provisions of the planning scheme and actually promotes separation and sustainable cohabitation between agriculture and residential living. The initial request was denied by council planning, citing locally significant agricultural land, but the area has not been in production since 2012 and is considered marginal country for sugar cane due to short cane drills, rocky soil, hilly terrain, and a history of poor yields when under cane production. We have a letter from Shane Hare, who is the productivity officer from Mackay Agricultural and Productivity Services, stating that the block is not ideal for growing or harvesting sugarcane as it is situated on a rocky ridge with low fertility silodic soils sloping in 2 directions, necessitating a large number of short cane rows, which is impractical to farm effectively or sustainably. As it currently stands, this area of land is being used as our front yard, where we have planted and are attempting to grow some fruit trees. It is also a grassed area for the children to play in. Whilst this area has been set aside for us to use, we do not know what the future holds. We are currently part of a family company that is growing sugarcane on the adjoining farm to our house block. We hope to continue this in the future, but nothing is certain, and we would like to see the boundary legally realigned to reduce any risk or issues that could arise. Thank you for your consideration on this matter.
Thanks, Mr. Muncho. Thank you. Director. Is there anything you need to add to this report?
I think the report, as you
Yep.
see, your worship is quite comprehensive.
Other questions? Other questions? Note that the officer's recommendation, and we're all aware of the officer's recommendation. Councillor Bonaventura,
I'd like to move a motion.
you have an alternative motion?
Correct.
Okay.
And if I could ask if that alternate motion be placed up on the screen if possible. Your Worship, I have forwarded that alternate motion to councillors,
Yes.
and with your permission, I would speak to the motion rather than read that. I think councillors
Please
should
speak
have
to the motion.
Thank you.
Hang on. Well, if you're going to speak to the motion, I need a second.
Need a second.
First of all. Yeah, I'm happy to deal with the alternative motion first up. And so if you move it.
Move it.
Seconded by Councillor Mann. Councillor Bonaventura.
Thank you. Your Worship, by way of background, the applicant seeks a development permit to reconfigure 2 parcels of land in a rural zone, realigning a shared property boundary with their father/father-in-law. The land parcels are in the locality of Cuttable, approximately 30 kilometres northwest of Mackay. The current site comprises of 2 parcels. Smaller one, 1.13 hectares of undulating land with a small amount of remnant vegetation to the south, and the top of the ridge has been levelled and contains a residential dwelling. The larger parcel of 26.7 hectares is undulating land. It only contains 10.55 hectares of farming land, currently used for sugarcane growing, and the remaining 16.5 hectares, or 16.15 hectares, is remnant vegetation and not suitable for agricultural purposes. The proposal by the applicant is to reconfigure the 2 rural land parcels by realigning the shared boundary on the northern side. The purpose of this boundary realignment is to provide additional land to the existing house lot and to amend a driveway encroachment by taking land off the existing farm lot. The proposed boundary realignment will result in the farm lot being reduced by 4,300 square metres to an area of 26.27 hectares, and the current house lot will gain and encompass a total area of 1.56. Councillors, staff have prepared a very detailed report, and I thank them for that. But on this proposal, after reading through it, there is alignment for approval on many conditions. Whilst I note that the staff have suggested refusal, I'm saying that we have a lot of alignment. The first point is the proposal will address an existing driveway access encroachment as a practical outcome. The second point is the Department of State Development, Infrastructure, Local Government and Planning, their referral body, SARA, did not raise any issues other than conditioning vegetation clearing. And in this case, Your Worship, this will not be an issue. Third point, subject to future building envelopes, the proposal does not conflict with the Biodiversity Overlay Code, the Bushfire Hazard Overlay Code, the Landscape Character and Image Corridor Overlay Code, or the Landslide Hazard Overlay Code. Dot point 4, the conflict only arises, in my opinion, in relation to the area, as our planning scheme allows for 2,000 square metres as an acceptable outcome. But in this instance, the applicant is asking for an area of 4,300 square metres. Now, when you look at the site and take into account the area within the proposed boundary that has been utilised firstly by the residents for many years, there will be no loss of sugarcane growing land. This gives me ample confidence that this increase in area is acceptable in these circumstances. In summing up, councillors, it's important to remember that there is an existing dwelling on site. This is simply a boundary realignment that reflects the current usage, and the proposal is not increasing the residential use of the area. So I ask for councillors' support.
Thanks, Councillor Bonaventura. Is there a speaker against? Are there other speakers? Councillor Bella? Speaking for?
Firstly, this is in no way a criticism of staff's work on this issue. I wholly and solely support them on following the policy with regards to agricultural land. I think they do a great job, and in no way should my comments be seen as a criticism of their work or of the policy we have. However, in this case, I actually went and inspected the site quite a while ago, I must add. One of the problems we face in this council, I believe, are historical bad decisions. I think the subdivision and the boundaries in this case were a very bad decision. Having looked at that block and applied a little bit of practicality with regard to agriculture, the reason we have the policy is they're not making any more agricultural land, and the eating away of land decreases the viability. There is a volume, an economy of scale. However, looking at that land, there is a disparity, despite what the overlays show, in the quality of that land between where the cane is currently growing. And growing cane is not an important issue for me, it's agriculture generally. But between the flat there and the amount of land in question, there is a great disparity. Now, whatever crop you were trying to grow there, you wouldn't be able to grow the same sort of crop as effectively on both of those areas, and that does affect the economy of scale with regard to agriculture. So that, to me, takes a little bit of pressure off in this situation. Historically, as I said, straight lines look good on a map, but rarely in practice are they effective. Now, in the inspection of the site, if you look at the geography and the topography of that current access point does raise some problematic issues with regard to safety, both for users of the road and people that are using the access point. So it covers that a little bit. My other comment is that these sort of things, if we were to look at a map, it would have, just a map, it would not have given me insight into this particular situation. And I actually think that these are the sort of things that should be covered on our, whether we were to do something else, but on our Council and Community Day. Actually put boots on the ground, not in the presence of the people wanting to do the development or whatever, but actually see the situation for ourselves in the presence of our staff who can tell us why they're thinking a certain thing. I think you cannot gain enough insight, and the more insight you have, I think makes your decision a little bit more, well, a hell of a lot closer to being the best decision. So in this particular case, and this case only, I will support this motion. Once again, I say that is not in any way being critical of the work staff has done or the decision they have come to in relation to this.
Are there other speakers? So, councillors, you are well aware that in a planning application for us to go against the officer's recommendation, and the officer's recommendation is for refusal based on three particular points that conflict with our Mackay town planning scheme. For us to go against that, we do need to have a very, very good argument so that the state doesn't call us in and override it. And I'm happy, I think, that the arguments put up with this alternative motion should be able to do that. So that's what, all of the emotion aside and all of the common sense aside, at the end of the day, we are going against an officer's recommendation to council, and we have to have a good reason to do that. I think we've got a reasonable reason up here that the state should not call us in, although I've been wrong before. But and I would suggest that this could be supported. So I'll put the motion then if there's no further speakers. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. Right. 11.2.3, the DA application number 102, the rural subdivision. Director, have you got anything further to say to this one?
Again, it's fairly straightforward, fairly comprehensive, and essentially in this one we are looking at a proposal to create an additional lot in the rural zone, and it is a smaller, I guess, rural lifestyle lot.
Okay, the questions? No. Nobody has any questions on this one? Would somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor Bella moves, seconded by Councillor Mann. Councillor Bella.
In the case of this particular application, I'm very happy to go with staff's recommendation. I think they have done an outstanding job, as they always do. In this case, we see basically extreme damage done to that volume of scale I talk about. To make farming viable, to make the same profit, we're needing more and more area because of increased input costs. In this case, I believe it would basically make the whole area, if we were to subdivide, non-viable to agriculture, not to cane growing or anything like that. Thus, I think that the staff have done a good job in this case, and I wholly support the motion.
Thanks, Councillor Bella. Speaker against? Any other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried. Thank you. Unanimously. 11.2.4 DA 47 is the material change of use for a crematorium. Director, is there anything further you need to add to this?
Again, Your Worship, I think that the report's quite comprehensive and quite straightforward. Happy to take any questions.
Right, well, I'll ask for questions after we hear some presentations from the public gallery. So we've got a couple of people who want to speak to this. So I'll ask, first of all, Melanie Clark? Melanie. Okay, so once again, you've got 3 minutes. As I said, it's not an interactive session, but just 3 minutes to present to council on this particular item.
Good morning, and thank you for providing me the opportunity to make a statement regarding our development application. The crematorium has been operating on rural acreage at Lagoons for 21 years now with full council approval. It is a very small business with 2 part-time employees. After purchasing the property in 2016, we realised that we would need to upgrade both the facility and equipment to bring us in line with current accreditation standards and to better service our clients. As previously stated in my email address, our current location is unsuitable due to proximity of neighbours and the lack of 3-phase power. The dirt road is difficult to navigate in wet weather, and flooding can limit the access to our property at times. We spent over a year searching for a property that would suit our needs. The proposed location at Mount Vince has 3-phase power and is flood free. There were no near neighbours, and it is located nearby another community facility, Mount Vince Rifle Range, which we felt made it unlikely to be a preferred location for neighbours in the future. The property is also very attractive as it has the ability to offer a second income stream from cane farming. The cane is currently under lease and we intend to continue to lease it. We already have approval to build a shed that will house the crematorium on the property. Prior to purchasing the property, we consulted with a reputable planner who has been involved in development applications for crematoriums in the past and has been on both sides of the process. He felt distance from sensitive land uses and the proximity of other community facilities made it an ideal location, that the planning scheme had scope to allow our community facility to remain in a rural location. Feedback on our initial application to council on the 5th of April stated that the current location at Balmagowan could potentially cater for expansion. We did not consider that there would be any issue with transferring to a new rural location, as we are simply swapping one rural location to another with no additional impacts. Moving to an industrial area is not a feasible option for us financially, nor does it fit in with the ethos of our business. We have done our research and spoken to many pet crematorium operators located in industrial areas, and they have all limited their operations to cremate from 5 p.m. when nearby businesses have finished for the day due to complaints. The council officer assessing our application does not believe the public perception and stigma of the cremation process as a planning issue. Our court ruling dismissed an appeal to locate a crematorium near businesses in Bundaberg. The judge's reasoning was that the crematorium would cause offence, even operating with environmental guidelines, to people of ordinary sensibilities. Precedence has already been set in other communities. Yeppoon Pet Crematorium has recently been approved to move from a location in a lifestyle block to 80 acres further away from sensitive land use. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right on time. Thank you very much, Ms. Clark. Alan Gooch, speaking to this.
Yes, yeah. Been representing the Clarks on this one. I'm Alan Gooch. I'm a town planner. I've been town planning in Mackay for 25 years with council, the state, and private practice. On this application, I've been my offside has been Shane Cleve, who's been council's town planner for the last 20 years. we both think that there's plenty of scope for councillors to approve this application without setting any wider precedent for any other activities in the rural area and without any cost to council. The rural zone allows for activities that need to locate outside of urban areas due to the amount of land they require or the significance of their impacts or any other reason. To give you a bit of context, kennels and catteries are something that's specifically supported under that provision. Any scheme, if you think about it, pet crematorium, kennels and catteries, we're all dealing with the management of dogs and cats on a commercial basis. And just at different ends of the life cycle, birth to death. And a small scale, and they need a bit of land around them as a bit of a buffer, preferably to get a bit of buffer from them. Particularly places where lots of people live, work or gather. Council officers are quite dismissive of any reasons why you might want to locate a crematorium outside of the urban area. But there's quite a long list of reasons why you would. When you look at the planning scheme, the only place that crematorium are actually supported is in the community facility zone. The community facility zone is in both urban areas and rural areas. So that's what covers all your schools, your churches, your community halls, cemeteries, and other community uses. Of course, they're quite sprinkled across the rural area, those sort of things, and they're held in the ownership of government and churches, so it's been handy for private individuals to get their hands on it. The closest that any crematorium in the area has gotten to it is the New Haven one out on Harbour Road. Many years ago, it found itself quite a good location there in terms of where all the community uses are surrounding it. Things like the cemetery and kennels and downs and ranges and fruit treatment works, things like that. The other two are in the rural area, with the pet crem. They've been a really successful model. All those businesses have been there 20 years, all work quite well. Models have worked because they are isolated and there's no one around them. They've got decent buffers around them. They're small scale. Brett keeps a look at the clock for me.
You're right on time now, Mr.
I've got quite a lot more to go through with it, but fundamentally they're one-off developments. There's no scope from the industrial area doesn't actually support them. And they're things that we've got a number of businesses that have been successful over a long period of time that are located in the rural area. And they're not going to have any impact on ag land.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, and Mr. Fox, Charles Fox. Just the same deal. 3 minutes, Mr. Fox.
Mr. Mayor, councillors, ladies and gentlemen, I haven't got much to say, but this facility is going to be located on prime agricultural land in the middle of the cane, or the edge of the cane field, which is on a narrow single lane road at the bottom of a steep hill with no passing facilities on it. It's also going to be located right next to a watershed from the eastern side of Mount Vince. When it rains, that road floods there, and when we get cyclones or whatever, the whole area around that area is not passable. There's no, within 1 kilometre there's 15 houses, and within 2 kilometres there's 50 houses. Where one of 3 houses that's dead downwind is where he's putting it. I spoke to a number of people around there, and there's nobody that I know of that wants it there. The vets and whatever where animals are put down are not out there in the country, they're in towns, so you've got traffic going out to scare, you've got stuff coming in. What else have we got? If it's such a good thing, why isn't it put in an industrial area if it's got no smells or they want to hide it in the cane? Just because you've got a cane bag doesn't mean you can hide whatever you like in it. As I said, there's 50 houses within 2 k's of it, and nobody really wants it. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Fox. Okay. So, councillors, are there questions on this particular? Councillor Ballard?
I do have a question here. From what I've gathered, the statement that the shed is already approved, new shed. For what use is that shed actually approved? Is that approved as a rural, like a farm shed?
Councillor Ballard.
Thank you, Worship. I mean, I'm not sure, I didn't think there were any structures on the site, but if there is a shed, it can be approved as a farm shed. There's certainly no approved urban use or alternative use at the moment for that site.
So the shed, just to be clear, if the shed was approved, it would be approved as a farm shed?
In the rural zone.
In the rural zone?
It's in the rural zone, just as a shed,
If the shed is approved in the rural zone, yes.
Right, exactly.
All right. Are there other questions? So, councillors, once again, this, as with the last one, the officers have recommended refusal of this development application as it conflicts with the planning scheme, and the 3 dot points that the officers have put up in their recommendation to the council are noted there. I do note, before we debate that one, I do note that Councillor May has an alternative motion.
Thank you very much.
Have you circulated this?
I have circulated the alternative motion, and if
I'm happy to deal with that. I'm happy to deal with that alternative motion. So, Councillor May, you want to move that alternative motion?
Please.
And there's a seconder, Councillor Mann. Councillor May.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. After lots of consideration and certainly the very comprehensive report that our officers have put together, I felt that the need to be able to justify the approval of this pet crematorium, and I'll draw your attention to the 3 dot points there. So the area of the 1,800 square metres development footprint is not a significant loss of agricultural land and would be an acceptable outcome accommodated within the planning scheme site. A planning scheme could already accommodate the construction of a shed without planning approval. So we're not talking about anything more than that. This is about the use. So the proposed development is generally consistent with the relevant code of industry activity, and could be argued that the proposed change of use is a consistent use within the rural zone as part of the rural industry activity. It is unfortunate that our planning scheme does not differentiate between a pet crematorium and a normal crematorium, and the use of a small pet crematorium is not public facing and will leave very limited impact on the rural zone. And if I can draw your attention to Serena as an example, and I know that was approved back in 2000. It operates very, very well in that rural zone just on the outskirts of town. That's a crematorium for humans. So I think having this business located on this site is a good outcome for the planning scheme. And I'd probably like to further note that in our planning scheme, and it's a matter that we need to take into consideration, that definition of a crematorium and whether we need to look at separating them from a crematorium as a crematorium as well, and where that actually is best suited. So we're currently saying that it is suited within the industrial zone. I think we need to have a look at that, and we missed that in our planning scheme review, but I'd like to foreshadow that we actually have a look at amendment to the planning scheme that makes those few differentiations. The rest of the conditions for approval are there for noting.
Thanks, Councillor May. The Speaker against?
Your Worship, I would just like to ask a question. Now that we've got a new motion on the floor, we didn't get a chance to question that. Could I just ask a question, please?
Sure.
And it probably goes to the Director. If this was to be approved, will the existing rights on the current property at Balnagown be withdrawn, or because I notice that's not in the notes that I received today from Councillor May?
Director, please.
Thank you, Worship. I believe that was an offer made by the applicant as part of the application process. Although it's not captured in the conditions of approval that have been put up on the screen. The reason for that is the current use is on a rural lot, but it's a rural lifestyle lot. So if this idea of withdrawing or the application or the approval from that side, it doesn't actually provide any sort of planning benefit, I guess, in terms of a return of agricultural land. That land is not going to return to agriculture.
And that's not the purpose of my question. The purpose of my question is, could someone else purchase the site at Balnagown and turn it and maintain it as a pet crematorium if it's got a right of use?
Oh, sorry, yes, they could.
In that case, Your Worship, I would like to move a slight amendment to Councillor May's to have that added as a addendum, because
So what's the amendment?
the amendment should state that the existing rights are to operate a crematorium in the, I think it's Griffiths Road site, be withdrawn as part of the approval
I'm
of
not
the
sure
new.
whether we can do that.
Oh, yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'd have to think about how we draft that in a way that was lawful, and it'd have to be the applicant who would withdraw that approval. We'd apply to withdraw that approval.
No, because, yes, I don't think we can include that in this particular motion. I don't think we've got the, as you said, the lawful right to do that.
Yeah, I'd have to consider, sorry, Your Worship, any conditions have to be reasonable and relevant to the development, and as I said, we'd have to see whether there was anything that we could attach that to in the planning scheme, I guess, and I don't know that we could require the applicants to do that. I'd have to seek further advice, but off the top of my head, I don't know that we could, or how we would do that.
I think we need to encumber that with this at the moment.
Okay. While I certainly understand it's probably in the applicant's best interest to remove that application, but or remove that right of use, I do worry that it may not happen. But
yeah, I understand that, but I don't think we can include that as an amendment to this particular motion.
all right.
So, Speaker, are there any other questions, by the way? So, Speaker against, Councillor Ballard.
I'm actually speaking against the proposed motion. I believe that, once again, preservation of ag land is extremely important. The reason I'm against it, apart from that, is that one of the reasons we've had to have this policy is seeing where we've had fragmentation of agricultural land by uses that are completely different to agriculture. So someone starts a workshop or a hard stand, it's just part of my farm, it's another income, and down the track what happens is, this is completely different, we're going to sell this, and it gets subdivided out, or we're going to cut off a bit of land for the son or the daughter or this or that, and gradually we see it getting eaten away. This is not an activity that is conducive to agriculture. It is probably being a little bit naive to suggest that an ag shed and a undertaking like this take the same amount of land. The shed itself might have the same footprint, but there's going to be a large car park that's going to be associated with this shed. If that car park is limited, there'll be the tendency to expand it. Once again, having seen that area, I agree with the standard of the road, the topography and geography of the area, and I really just don't think this is suited for any sort of volume of traffic. B, I think parking will impact agricultural production down the track. C, it is an activity that is so divorced from agriculture that ultimately there will be attempts to segment this from the main parcel of land, and thus I'm against the alternate motion, and I commend the staff on their original motion.
Thank you. Speaker 4. Councillor Hassan.
Thank you, Worship. Just in support of Councillor May's motion, I noted in the report it states that there are 3 current operational crematoriums in the Mackay region. There are actually 4. The 4th one that was approved at Paget, I actually worked for that business for 8 years, and that has been operational since that approval was given. That is located in an industrial area, and I refer to Mr Fox's concerns, and to the best of my knowledge, several of the businesses in that industrial area would be completely unaware that there's a crematorium located within their midst, such as the technology used in crematoriums now, that any emissions are well controlled. I would be loath to say that there'd be many people in that area that are actually aware that there's a crematorium in that area at all. All cremations in that facility are done within business hours, and that's a human crematorium. So I don't think any of the concerns about being upwind or downwind of it would be, particularly the area where the applicants are putting this proposed crematorium. The other thing I'd like to highlight in the report is that out of the 4 crematoriums that we do have in our area, 2 of those are currently in the rural zone. So I don't think we're stepping too far outside
what previous councils have already approved. So I'm in support of Councillor May's motion.
Thank you. Speaker against? Are there any other speakers? Well, once again, councillors, we're seeking to go against a recommendation of the council's officers if this report is supported, and we have to have some very good reasons, as we did in the last one. So I think that the reasons that have been raised in this alternative motion are supportable. I don't see any reason that the state would want to call this in based on these reasons that we've put up as a council. So I'd be happy to support it. So I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Councillor Bella and Councillor Jones recorded as against. Motion's carried. Thank you. 7.3.1, our engineering and commercial infrastructure reports now. So for the ECR reports, first up is Transport and Drainage Director.
Thank you, Worship. It's a comprehensive report, so I'll be very brief. 4 incidents, 3 asset damage, 1 injury, over 1,000 static work orders done, and good to see strong customer survey results. Other than that, happy to take questions.
Questions for the Director? No questions for the Director. Thank you.
Your Worship.
Well, Councillor Jones.
I do have a question. I just wanted to note on page 194, it's got a graph and it explains the maintenance activities of clear open drains, which the Director and I have spoken about in the past. But just of late, I've been getting a lot of requests from community members saying things like, live on a floodplain, and when are we going to clean the drains out, etc., etc. So we are moving into a cyclone season, and on that graph in particular, it shows quite low the number of cleaning out of those drains. And I'm just curious, are we about to ramp up because we're coming into cyclone season, or is there a reason that that's so low?
Okay, Director.
Yeah, through your Worship. Obviously, it depends on the drain. So a lot of our drains, unfortunately, don't have a concrete liner. So, ongoing wet weather makes it difficult to do it. We normally have a program leading into the wet season where we get the majority of our drains, or all of our drains, cleaned up as best they can coming into the wet season. But I'd have to specifically take that on notice as anything, or get some data around the ones that we haven't been able to get into because of those circumstances.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Councillor Bonaventura.
Just in relation to drainage, and it's probably Director, I apologise, but the Wallen Street drain, we planning to have that finished before the wet season comes in, that near Bridge Road, between Bridge Road and Wallen Street?
Sorry, you asking me.
Yeah. Director, who can answer that one?
Yeah, that's currently under construction, and that is the current progress, I believe.
Oh, thank you. I drive past it recently and I went, oh, we've got a long way to go, but obviously, yes.
All right. Further questions? No further questions? Would somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor Mann moves, Councillor Green seconds, Councillor Mann.
I'll be very brief too. A thank you to the Director and staff for their continued focus on safety. In my opinion, for us to continue to work safely, it's important that all these incidents are reported, including the paper cuts, because that's where we get our learnings from. And everybody benefits when we can make improvements. And congratulations to the staff on the survey results. 4 stars is an outstanding result, and I thank staff for their continued focus to customer service.
Thanks, Councillor Mann. Speaker against? Any other speakers? Councillor Bella speaking for.
Just regarding maintenance activities prior to a wet season coming along, it's probably not as simplistic as many might think, in that the weather dictates our preparation for the weather. So, wet weather can impact our ability to clear drains prior to larger rain events. Sometimes you're far better off leaving them alone than making a mess. I notice our mowing of open drains has been outstanding, and it's good that it's getting done now, because the actual the waste from that mowing can become a problem itself if it's not actually removed. So given that time, it's got a chance to rot down. The other thing that I've noticed in some areas, especially down my way, is while it's been particularly dry, because of some of the better rainfall we had earlier in the year, it's dry on the surface, but there is seepage in some of the areas, spring-fed seepage. So I would suggest that some of our drains may well be problematic to deal with because of that situation. So just looking at the actual graph and the data here does not necessarily give you like a practical idea of the conditions faced by our staff. I think they're doing the best they can, and I commend them on it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bella. Are there other speakers? The motion, those in favour? Any against? The motion is carried. Okay. 1.2.2. 3.2. UCR report for waste services.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, just starting with safety. So there was a significant incident where we did have a truck rollover, so a contract operator coming up to dump it to took place at Hogan's Pocket. So investigations are fundamentally complete, but we get bring that back in front of the ELT to understand it. A complex issue given that there was a number of obviously different companies involved in that. So the people loaded up to the operator coming from the site, so our contractors. But obviously something to take very seriously, and we'll look to obviously get the lessons learned from that. Just the other quick highlights, Hogan's Pockets tonnages are down again. No specific reason for that, but across the board. So it's easy to have that variability coming through all the time. The highlight that we referenced that the paper and cardboard baler has arrived. That's now operational, so it's good to see that in use. And I was a little bit disappointed to see our voucher rate down for the period, given that obviously we're coming into the wet season. So ideally, at the back end of September, we normally see a significant increase in usage, but certainly down and the lowest we've had for the last 3 years. But haven't taken questions.
Questions to the Director, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Worship. I have 3 questions. One of them was actually just asking how the gentleman was that was involved in the truck rollover, and you've already sort of mentioned that working through all of that, so assuming he's okay. The second question on 212, wondering why Lifeline has such a high allocation. It's quite considerable compared to everybody else. And my third question, Your Worship, to the Director, again to do with Hogan's Pocket on page 220, that there's a management initiative there about Hogan's Pocket gravel resheeting, and I remember the trip that we did out there and we talked about the crushed glass and how well it's stabilised. So I'm wanting to know if the new gravel resheeting for that part of the road is going to have the glass in it.
Director.
Thank you, Worship. So in relation to the injury, so there was a concussion sustained, but the operator is fine, and we'll continue to obviously liaise with any ongoing issues. The Lifeline matter, so in relation to our not-for-profits, it's really a historical issue on the tonnage you can see, and probably does go back that Lifeline would have had a lot more bins out in relation to the community. We work actively with the not-for-profits to try and minimise the number of bins because we just saw them as a dumping ground of materials in, and it's great to see now that we've got, I think, a really good outcome in relation to that. It's something we continue to review year on year out, but it really depends on the amount of tonnages we're getting from a not-for-profit. So within our sort of parameters, we'll adjust that up and down depending on what we're seeing coming through. And just on the last one, yes, so the current upgrade to Hogan's Pocket Road does include incorporation of glass. I think that's currently underway and due to finish prior to Christmas.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor Bonaventura.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just in relation to bin request action by contractors, I note that our replacement bin numbers are on the rise and have been sort of steadily heading up for the last, 4 months in a row. Apart from our peak in January, which is when we put out a press release saying you could get your bin replaced. Have we got an issue, you think, with our oldest bins, or is there any reconciliation done on why we're getting such a sort of, look, it's 385, 411, 432, and the graph's going that way per month. So is there any recollection or?
To Your Worship, it's probably because councillors raised at their council meetings, so people are aware of it, take advantage of it. No, I think there might be some legacy, obviously, when the contractor comes in, depending on existing bins that may be maintained. So there might be a legacy issue of old bins, obviously, getting to a point, but that's what the service is there. So it's really actually pleasing to see that people taking the opportunity to do that damage bins. They can go in and get them fixed, and we're hearing good things from that. But I'm not actually sure on the reason we've had that increase in the last 3 months.
Well, Your Worship, I'm probably responsible for 2 of those because 2 people have rung me and I said, just ring the council and you'll get a new bin.
Undoubtedly, it'll be 500 next month. So. Councillor Bella.
I know that waste voucher redemption rate's down. I would note, to be honest, that that doesn't necessarily mean that people have less need. It probably just means, well, that the system is not working. In my case, I use them when I need them, and I haven't needed them. I also note that our tonnage is down. Now, I know tonnage at Hogan's Pocket, a large or significant proportion would be building waste and that sort of thing. But I'm just kind of wondering the significance of a decrease in both our waste vouchers and our tonnages, whether we're just producing less waste at this period. And I wonder whether we've ever actually looked into that. We're always talking about, you know, produce less waste. And I'm wondering whether these two figures, well, one figure, yes, there's definitely less waste going there, but the other one, that redemption rate. And I'd probably like to know, I know the figures we probably don't have, but maybe the tonnage coming out of the bins as well. Is there any correlation between that redemption rate, tonnage out of the bins, and Hogan's Pocket? Are we producing less waste?
Director, can you answer that?
I reckon have a go, Your Worship. I think the data's not quite there to be able to sustain that, if that's a trend or not. But certainly it corresponds that they've had less tonnages going in September or the last couple of months. It probably corresponds to less vouchers being used. So I think there's a bit more work. I mean, we've tried to have a look at it and see if there is seasonal differences that occur, but there's no real clear trends. And as you'll see, even month to month, we can be up or down in relation to that. But obviously, as part of our waste strategy work, we'll continue to do more work around that and try and understand what our data's telling us. There certainly probably is some diversion from demolition waste, so there's a lot more contractors available to take that now. So obviously, there's a cost to obviously take it to a landfill. So a lot of that waste is probably being diverted as well.
Okay. Thank you. Are there further questions? Somebody like to move the reports of adoption? Councillor Hassan moves, second by Councillor Green. Councillor Jones. Councillor Hassan.
Thank you, Bishop. I'll be brief. Just wanted to confirm that while there was no lost time injuries this month, there were 4 incidents involving the contractors, one which the Director has referred to, but 2 of those involved collisions with vehicles, both with waste delivery trucks. So it's just something that, safety is obviously something that Council places great importance on, and I think it's just a reminder for both contractors and the general public to be really aware of their surroundings. Those trucks are on the roads every day, and just asking people to be, just to maintain their focus on safety. On a more positive note, it was really great to see that our materials recovery facility tours have been back up and running. These were obviously shut down during COVID. So this month there were 6 school groups that undertook tours of the MRF. An additional 2 education centres that received trailer talks from our staff. So these visits are a really great way to educate the younger generation about waste management and resource recovery, and they're obviously the future of where we're going towards a circular economy. So I'd just like to ask the Director to pass on thanks to the team involved in that education process. And lastly, as the Director also referred to, we're coming into storm season, and while we're seeing lower uptake of the voucher system, I would greatly encourage people to take up that opportunity. We've just seen some hail events already in the last couple of weeks. The Bureau of Meteorology is predicting a high number of storms and cyclone activity this region, so people really need to get on board, get their yards cleaned up and take advantage of the voucher system.
Thanks very much, Councillor Hassan. Are there other speakers? Speaker against? Speaker for? Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Worship. I just really wanted to agree with some of the sentiments that Councillor Hassan have just talked about, and in particular about the waste education trailer. I think it's really, really important that we can provide this to the schools in our region. With Sunday Anglican School and the C&K Kindy at Slade Point were this month's recipients in the report, and it was really great to see that there was another 87 students that now have learnt a little bit about waste reduction, reusing and recycling, because educating our future generations is where we need to go.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Are there other speakers? Councillor Bonaventura speaking for.
Yes, just like to congratulate the Director on the fact that we have got a COVID-19 waste services status, and I think that's very important, especially going into early new year, where we anticipate there could be a large rise in the number of cases, and our waste staff are those that are on the front front line, yeah. Yeah. So at that point is where they will run that risk, and it's hard to tell who's coming through, etc., etc. So I appreciate they've got that, and it should be noted, and I thank them for it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bonadura. Are there other speakers? No other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. 11.3.3, the Engineering and Commercial Infrastructure Water Services. Mark,
thank you, Worship. So, be remiss of me not to mention the Mackay treatment plant success in getting best tasting water in Queensland again. So obviously we presented that award, but I'll try and slip that in every month for the next couple of months before we get to the national award, so we can obviously talk about it lots. Other than that, quickly, Midge Point, so we've done obviously the connection there, there's a little bit of work still to do with Kelsey Creek, so hopefully leading into the period we normally see issues arising, that will be sorted and the community sees some good outcomes there. The last one is probably just to highlight the customer survey results. So obviously we have an independent process where all of the customer requests across a 2-month period get sent surveys on a random basis. So water obviously traditionally scores very well, and we've got 4.25 stars. You'll notice a couple of comments in there about responding to leaks, so it's a fine balance sometimes about obviously sending people out outside of hours versus when we see a leak. So continuing to work with the impact staff and the community around that. Have you taken further questions?
Questions? No questions?
I've just gone to worship,
Right.
if I may. Just in regards to the Midge Point pipeline, and as this is a report for September, we are now nearly at the end of October. Have we had any feedback from community in regards to the quality of the water now?
Director?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Certainly not directly related to issues that we normally see with the manganese, but that's normally obviously once we sort of get into the warmer months. So if we were going to start getting those issues with complaints, we start noticing them now. But I'll take it on notice and check if we've had any complaints come through our pathway request.
Thank you.
All right. No further questions? Somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor Jones moves. Councillor Mann seconds. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Worship. Very good report from the Director and the staff. Just 2 points I wanted to mention. Page 226, in the overview, the 4th dot point talks about leak notification. So just a shout out to those online to say that we're going through a really dry spell at the moment, and watering your lawn to be the greenest that it can be is really not water-wise. To those that don't do that type of watering, please keep your eyes open for those little green spots, because they are likely to be a leak in our network, and we'd like to remind them to report that. Page 238, once again, now the water education, you know, for the schools in our region. You know, without educating our next generation to be able to preserve this wonderful life-sustaining resource, where would the future be? So it was really great to see that there were sessions held at 7 local schools, and 282 students were actually educated in being water-wise. Thank you, Worship.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Speaker against? Are there any other speakers? Councillor Bell is speaking for.
2 things I'd like to comment upon. When you look at the comment here regarding the water notifications, leak notifications, 674 leak notifications, non-MyH2O members, 5,398 leak notifications issued for registered MyH2O members during September 2021. That number of leaks is a lot of water. And the thing to note is that the MyH2O numbers, which are far in excess of the non-MyH2O people, generally receive their warnings far more promptly than the others do. So even though there's a lot of people here with those leaks, I would hazard a guess to say that the amount of water lost is in inverse proportion to that. They get their notification promptly, and anyone with any common sense would get something done pretty quickly. 674 leaks out there that take a period of time to be notified of means a significant amount of water. Once again, I keep banging on about MyH2O for the simple reason that I think it's a wonderful initiative. We've got quite good dam levels and everything at the moment, but water usage is a habit and guarding water is a habit. And it's not good enough during a period when we've got plenty of water to say, oh, it doesn't really worry. We've got incredibly high quality water. You can't just go throwing it away. So leaks really we need to guard that water, and one of the ways of doing that is to join the My H2O setup. I also was looking at some of the where we've exceeded guidelines in the hardness aesthetics, and once again the paragraph here regarding the Kamala water supply, if we ever needed another example as to why we had to go ahead with that water treatment plant. Kamala has had historically the hardest water in our region and is actually one of the last places to get a water treatment plant, and I look forward to its opening.
Thanks, Councillor Bella. Are there other speakers? No, Councillor Seymour.
Yes, I echo Councillor Bella's comments, but there's some figures here I've been looking at over the last couple of months. Is like 6 months ago, residential leakage was 27,000 kilolitres. Now it's down to 19,500. So there's a saving of 3 pools, Olympic pools and water. And in non-residential was the biggest one. There was 6 months ago there was 44,000 kilolitres. Now it's only 20,000 kilolitres. So there's a saving of 24,000 litres there in water usage to ratepayers. And just a few figures.
Yeah, thanks very much, Councillor Seymour. All right, there are no other speakers. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. And Org Services, the Org Services monthly review for September. Director.
Morning, Your Worship. Safety continues to be a focus of the department, with no lost time injuries recorded during September and only one mining incident reported. Still on safety, the Workplace Health and Safety team have focused on emergency arrangements in MRC facilities this month, delivering a program of building evacuation exercises and development of new emergency plans. These drills provide an opportunity for the team to learn and improve so that all staff are prepared in the event of a real emergency. The Building Services team have implemented 2 very successful process improvements. The first resulted in increased animal registration and ensuring our records are up to date. The second involved digitising over 1,000 paper copy files, which streamline the annual licence renewal process and improve the organisation's access to these records. Well done to this team for identifying and implementing improvements. MRC has once again partnered with the Resource Industry Network for the Mackay mentoring program. The current program includes 14 pairs matched between MRC and local businesses. The Health and Wellbeing Committee held an expo for all MRC staff during the month, which provided them with the opportunity to learn about health and wellbeing related organisations in the community. This included some free live demonstration, interactive displays and giveaways. The mark continues to attract good numbers, with the free weekends in inflatables proving popular, with the Blue Water Lagoon currently closed for repairs. The Blue Water Lagoon is on track to reopen in late November, ahead of the school holiday period. The mark also received a visit during September of Ash Maloney, the first Australian Olympian to receive an Olympic decathlon medal. We thank Ash for his generosity of his time, answering questions and inspiring our local athletes. Maybe in the future we'll see our very own Mackay decathlon champion. Happy to answer.
Thanks, Director. Questions for the Director? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Worship. On page 267, 8.6, under land and tenure, I was just curious, 2 questions. Where it talks about encroachments, what suburb that those encroachments were in, but also on the same list, there's a heading miscellaneous. I think it says there's 10 items or something that was miscellaneous. What type of things are miscellaneous?
I'll just have to say that I don't have those details.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Worship.
Further questions for the Director? Councillor Bella.
In the executive summary, we speak about the delivery of several plan items, and I make note of the amphibious vehicle, 8-wheel drive, vector control team, which I see is a very hard job for those people. But my question is that machine a replacement of existing plant? or is it actually an increase in our capability?
I believe it would be a replacement of an existing piece of equipment.
Right.
Yeah, so just confirm with the director that that's correct. It's, yeah, like replacement.
Okay. Further questions? No further questions? Would somebody like to move the reports of adoption? Councillor Jones moves. Councillor Hassan seconds. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Worship. Very good report once again from our staff and our director. Just a couple of things to point out. The overview of external customer services, I note that we are actually in the red regarding grades of service and customer request for completion. And while as a council we work really hard at trying to keep with the allocated time frame so that we can be an efficient council, I just want to say, Your Worship, that sometimes members of our community just need someone to listen to their issues, and that does take time. So thank you to the customer service team. They do an amazing job. I also wanted to note on page 270, learning and development activities. It's great to see that our staff involvement in the training for the month of September. I note that we had 667 in total, so a big shout out to all of those staff members that have been upskilling. Thank you, Worship.
Speaker against? Any other speakers? For the motion, those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. There's no petitions, there's no tenders, there's no notified motions. We've got one in the public gallery, we haven't. Okay. No public participation. Late business. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Worship. Well, as previously been stated, we have over 700 delegates across Queensland in our town at the moment for the annual 125th LGAQ conference. All the very best to Greg Hallam, CEO, who will be retiring after 28 years, and also welcoming Alison Smith, the new CEO. It's been really great, Your Worship, being able to network at the conference. It's been a great economic boost to our region, and I'd just like to give a bit of a shout out to Councillor Desley O'Grady from Gladstone, Councillor Kylie Bourne from Western Downs, Councillor Jeff McDonald from Toowoomba, Councillor Kerry Shine from Toowoomba, who's also the former Director General, and Councillor Paul Antonio, who's the Mayor of Toowoomba. I just hope that they travel safe and everyone travels safe at the end of the conclusion today of our conference. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you. Further late business? Any further late business? Yeah. Councillor Bella.
2 weeks ago, I had the opportunity, well, a number of weeks before, I was invited by the Director of Community and Client Services at Burdekin Council to come up to speak to their staff. So on the Thursday 2 weeks ago, I had the opportunity to speak to approximately 80 staff at breakfast, another 80 at lunch. 2 barbecues in the one day is a winner for me. But we spoke during Safe Work Week on mental health, resilience, coping strategies, and supporting your teammate. They have some pretty good strategies in place up there, which is quite good considering that they actually have difficulties in accessing services, and they've undertaken to use a company that will provide those services to them. Rarely have I run across a more engaged, and to be honest, it was a no questions wrong question, but a more engaged audience, and some of the questioning was particularly close to the mark. I've got to say, I'd like to go on record that I commend Burdekin Council both for their hospitality and for their initiatives in this regard for their staff. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bella. Further items of late business? No further items of late business. We have two confidential reports. One is the draft minutes of the Invest Mackay events and attraction program, and the other is the approved sponsorship. So the reason to go into...
I do have one question, Your Worship.
Okay. So we'd like to move that we close the meeting. Councillor Green, seconded by Councillor Matura. Those in favour? Any against? It's carried. on. We do that still.
No, we're on the cameras again.
Oh, we are? Okay, well. Okay, so 17.1 is the draft minutes of the Invest Mackay Events and Conference Attraction Program, the Advisory Committee meeting of the 13th of September and the 11th of October. Would somebody like to move the adoption? Councillor May moves, second by Councillor Mann. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried. 17.2, the approved sponsorship under the Invest Mackay Events and Conference Attraction Program for August. Councillor Green moves, seconded by Councillor Townsend. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, CEO. Thank you, directors. I declare the meeting closed.